Hi, everyone, and welcome to another round of the behind the scenes episodes of Disrupted Work Reimagined. So today I have Art Blanchford with me, and Art, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Likewise, a lot of fun to be here with you, Tammy. I'm really excited about this unconference.
Yeah, me too. And we were just talking in the green room. And it's just funny because I've been on Art's podcast twice. And so this is a very interesting reverse mic situation. So it's nice to have you on the other end for a change.
Yeah, and good to be the one to respond and not the one
Yeah,
that
yeah,
leads
right.
the
Exactly. And
conversation.
not have to do
That's
all
great.
the post production stuff and all that kind of fun stuff, right? So, Art's going to be leading a session at Disrupted Work Reimagined that is really designed to help leaders navigate the complexities that everyone is facing today. And leadership is going to be the tie that binds more than ever as we move into and navigate the continued disruptive world that we're in. So, Art, before we start to drop some knowledge bombs on some preview ideas of what they'll see at the conference, why don't you share with us a little bit about your corporate background?
Yeah,
Some really interesting pedigree that I think is important
yeah.
to know
No,
about.
I have lived all over the world, three continents, and run teams in engineering, operations, sales, full P&L in Germany, North America, and in China. Probably couple things that are super interesting. Early on in my career, with the help of my wife, decided to show up when I moved to Germany at 27. And there, you graduate from engineering school at 27. I was a director already at 27, moving to Germany. And I know it's an expert driven culture. And I thought I need to show up as the guy who knows. And my wife said, "But do you really know?" And I'm like,
Oh,
maybe you should show up asking questions instead. So I was 27 years old and I showed up asking questions like, what makes you feel a member of the team? How can I make your job better? If you were king for a day, what would you change in this company? What's the one thing I can do to make it easier? These type of questions. And that shift of showing up, leading with questions, leading with interest in the humanity of the people. What's going on in your personal life that might affect work that I should know about, right? To understand that led the whole rest of my career. So everywhere I went, I could parachute into any situation, even though people were like, "Oh, it's completely different in China, or it's completely different dealing with the French than the Germans," because I was running part of France as well when I was
that is
there.
a true story, by the
Yeah,
way.
and
Yeah.
and then on a cultural level they are, but on a human level they're the same, right? And so running China was, really interesting job of, multi-billion-dollar company, billion and a half coming up to 2 billion. I hired 4,000 people when I was there, almost up to 10,000, built 80 buildings all in 3 years, and became the number one quality organization in the world, in China, while I was maintaining the profit and doing it through the team, right? Because of being willing to really see the humanity in each person, work with each person on the team, and let the people self-select that don't fit the culture of the way that we're going. Really clear on our values, and it's amazing what people can do when you have their hearts and their brains, not just their backs and their hands. And it's really, yeah, it's really amazing. So that was a lot of fun. And then stood up, spun out a active safety and autonomous driving company from the automotive safety company, and then sold that to Qualcomm,
Okay.
for the software that they wanted. I was up through 21, and then helped with a bunch of consulting for some of those big M&As related to that up through 22, 23. So yeah, that's a little bit of my corporate background. Never the smartest guy in the room, but never afraid to ask the questions, and really seeing people and bringing out the best in people because of the leadership and the teamwork and seeing their humanity.
You bring up two interesting points that are themes that keep showing up. One is a different stage of curiosity that we need to show up with as leaders.
Yeah,
We've always should have been curious, but I think how we look at that is very different in terms of curious about who and how and what versus what's possible.
right, right.
And so I think our curiosity to switch, and then also the other thing that you brought up that I thought was really interesting and relevant to the things that we're hearing just in the swirl, right, and in the noise right now, is really about capturing the hearts of our team members.
Yeah,
And there's so much focus on technology and AI and disruption and all these things, that we really do believe that at the end of the day, the humanity is going to be the differentiator because technology is the equalizer.
yeah,
It allows the little guy and the giants to compete. And so you learn these lessons early.
yeah.
And how, in your mind, do those early days of those lessons need to be modified and updated to be able to thrive in the disruptive environment that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is that because technology can do so much more, there's going to be, as you said, less of a differentiator on what people can do, but it's who they are. And how can you bring out who they are? How can you make it safe? How can you give the psychological safety to the people to show up so they don't have the stories that you tell about not knowing what they can do and having problems because they don't know what the rules are if they can speak up?
Yeah.
So, how can you, as the leader, not just allow, bring out, farm, cultivate the best beingness of everyone on your team? For two reasons. One, that's what's going to give you the creativity and the innovation that you need to grow. And two, very basic, so you can keep them. Because if you don't do that, they're going to look for somewhere where they feel seen that way. Otherwise, you can let ChatGPT 5 do it for you. Right. So that, I
Right.
think that's a big shift. And what that requires, which is something really different than is what been talked about in business a lot before, is as leaders, we have to work on ourselves. We have to get ourselves out of the way so that we can really show up, not with all the answers, being curious, pulling out the best of other people, not getting triggered, right? Jerry Colano, one of my favorite big time coaches, talks about getting the ghosts out of our own machine,
Right.
right? Every business issue is an interpersonal issue. You're always dealing, whether it's a banker, an investor, a customer, an employee. And if you don't invest in yourself to be able to handle those interpersonal issues, you're not going to be successful going forward. That
Yeah.
didn't used to be the case. You could be different before and you could sort of drive by command and control and still be successful. But with technology coming on as it is, that's not going to be the case going forward.
Yeah. And the multi-generational workforce and all these other things that we're struggling
Absolutely.
with.
Right. And
And
all of that covers under the same thing. Like if you're used to just doing it the way you've always done it, as I am as a 53-year-old guy, right? It's not going to work with the same way with a 23-year-old, with my son that's getting out of school right now, my other son that's already working, right? But if you're curious, if you see people, if you hear people, if you're pulling out what is their strengths, what is their bright spots, it covers that too with multi-generations as well.
yeah, the human bit, right? Which is
The
interesting.
humanity is huge.
Yeah, the days of broken glass and getting away with it are coming to a rapid end, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Um, and so, with your perspective, you work, through Pinnacle Leadership, which is your new organization, and the work that you do. What is one challenge or opportunity that leaders can't afford to ignore right now?
Well, I mean, I think it's both the challenge and the opportunity of how are you showing up for your people? How are you as an individual setting the culture and the tone of what's expected and creating an environment as a leader that's bringing out the best in our people? It's not just about putting somebody, oh, we say we put them in the right seat in the bus. How do you really know that they're in the right seat unless you're curious enough, unless you've seen them enough, heard them enough to know really what they're good at, and not just the skills and not just the sort of technical skills, because again, those can be done in a lot of places today,
Sure.
right? But that's where you're going to see the differentiation. Are you willing to look yourself in the mirror, to be willing to ask for feedback on how you're doing, to put your own discomfort higher than the well-being of the company or lower than the well-being of the company. Not put your comfort above the well-being of your employees and your company and your customers. So to be willing to be humble and to learn those things that maybe as a leader, you're always a little bit better at everything than everybody else. And that's normally the case, but you can't do everything yourself. And if you don't have that approach to things, you're going to miss out on the best people that can help you grow. And even the people that are already there, you're going to miss out on what they can bring to the table. And the opportunity on the flip side of that, if you unlock that, you get a lot more out of the organization, a lot more creativity, a lot more innovation, a lot more humanity, a
Yeah.
lot more attractivity.
Right. And one of the big things, and not in the leadership track that you're covering, but this is all integrated. And so we can't decouple all of it, is you're mentioning that if you're not meeting your people where they are, you run the risk of them leaving. I would also argue you run the risk of them staying and
Which
being connected.
is even worse. Exactly.
I almost was like, okay, if you're out, you're out. And there's just such a massive level of apathy
Yeah.
and complacency that has really, I think, hit our, these organizations. And the leaders are under a tremendous amount of pressure.
Absolutely.
They are that connective tissue between corporate strategy and commitments to stakeholders and shareholders and boards to the break room, right? And connecting what's really happening on the ground.
Yeah.
And so what is a shift or a trend that you're seeing that's changing the way we work?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and this comes back to, and I'm stealing a word from you, but that, collaboration is the new competition.
Hmm.
right? So leaders face adversity. There's competing priorities all the time. There's the poly crisis coming at them. It's isolating often to be the leader. Who can you really talk to, right? So, but then if collaboration is the new competition, who is it that's in your field that's not a direct competitor, or maybe they are, but there's still things you can learn from them to be able to share ideas, to be able to bounce things off of each other that you maybe can't bounce off of your team, right? I mean, I'm seeing more and more in the executives I'm talking to that some sort of peer advisory group that's not a directly competitor, but it's in your space, maybe
Hmm.
different geographically, is a really valuable sounding board, maybe the most valuable one that you can have to see what's going on and to not be so isolated, or having a strong coach in that to do your own work, right? Then other thing I would say that, this is also something for leaders to look out for. You said maybe they'll stay is another big problem, which it can be. And it's our job to create a culture where it's uncomfortable for someone to stay that's not fully engaged. And in the vein of collaboration is the new competition, Tammy, the first place where the collaboration needs to take over the new competition is inside your own company. So
Hmm.
people are willing to collaborate on the team, to really have strong teamwork instead of withholding because it's going to give them an edge for the next promotion. Right? That's one of the areas that I see that it's really the leader's responsibility to set up the culture in the team, to set up the teamwork in a way that we have collaboration instead of competition inside the company as well.
Yes, I don't know how many times I've heard, both as an executive and on the other side, guide from the side. It's like, I can't tell anyone this, they'll steal my idea. And
Right,
I'm like, oh, are you kidding
right,
me?
right.
Right. And as a leader, when you hear that, you have to hold up a mirror and
Yeah,
be like, what am I doing to drive this, zero sum game culture
yeah,
where for me to win, somebody else has to lose.
yeah.
Um,
We had
and
this thing in my teams where we would say, steal with pride. Right. Like
yes,
really, if you have something, offer it, but also be willing to be humble enough to say, "Wow, that's a little bit better than mine. Let's iterate."
right.
Open source, when that's how the whole thing works, right? Everybody iterates, and you end up with something better, right?
Mhm. And so when we think about the session that you're leading, so let's talk about your point of view and the title of your track and the things that you're going to be doing. And then what is one immediate action that you hope that everyone in the room takes away from Monday?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that anybody leaving there on Monday can apply immediately is
Hmm.
really how to see the humanity in your team and how to have, I call courageous conversations, right? To how to bring yourself into a place where your communication, your conversations with your team members makes a huge shift in your connectivity, a huge shift in how fast you can get things done, how you trust each other, and me see a big shift in productivity immediately just by being willing to have these real, authentic, vulnerable conversations with your individual team members. And they'll have a toolbox for that coming out of this session that they can put into place immediately, and makes a huge difference. I can tell you, when running billion plus company, when my assistant thought I was getting too busy to have those conversations, I did every 1 month, not on KPIs, just on this type of conversation. She thought I was too busy because I had 12 direct reports, probably a little bit too much, and it's 12 hours a month. But the whole vibration of the company was feeling like a preventative maintenance where the bearing's about to go out, right? It was vibrating at a funny
Yes.
frequency. And as soon as I put those back in place, then quieted down, right? So especially if you're running a big, busy or diverse, spread out or generationally diverse, geographically diverse organization, super important. And that's a tool that everyone can take away with them.
I love that. Now, the old days used to be, vulnerability was a sign of weakness.
Yeah,
And saying that you don't know, well, there's somebody behind you who is happy to say that they do know to take that job.
right.
And what can leaders do today to start, if you're in that, which so many companies are, and so what do you think leaders can do to start to change being vulnerable without being seen as weak?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that really works well is to recognize what it is that you bring to the team, regardless of what your title is.
Yeah.
Right? There's titles all over the place, but still, what you bring primarily might be something different, or it might be a subset or a certain strength point. So, what is it that you bring to the team, and what is it that you need to work on, and to have the courage, especially as a leader, to have the courage to get that input from your team members and from your colleagues, especially get a peer advisory group from them, but also from your team, and for them to see you being willing to really hear them, pull out of them what's the feedback of the areas that you're doing well, what is the strengths you really are bringing to the team, and what are the things you need to work on, or one thing you need to work on. That gives a great example, and then everybody starts doing the same, and instead of everybody showing up I remember Alan Mulally talking about when he took over CEO of Ford, how come we're losing $19 billion, but all of our scorecards are green,
Yes.
right?
Because no one is going to say anything is yellow or red.
Nobody's going to tell the
Yes.
because they're going to get fired.
Yes.
That's the responsibility of the leader to set a culture where we can tell the truth and then address it. Accepting what is, facing the brutal facts. Jim Collins is the first step to being able to do that. But to have that on your interpersonal relationships with your team as well is the way to show their vulnerability without people being afraid that the ship's going completely in the wrong direction. The great thing about that is once you do that, then you're not enforcing all that yourself because everybody on the team has the same understanding, and if you get it really going well, they'll enforce it with each other completely. This type of vulnerable and high stakes, high commitment interaction and community.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember trying to create this type of culture in a multinational organization I was leading. And so time zones were weird. Some people were home. We tried to rotate. And, when we felt like there was an elephant in the room that needed to get out, or if someone was just kind of buying their own BS a little bit too much, right, and needed to kind of dial it back, one of the tactics we use, because depending on the culture, that challenge, that honest feedback is not part of what they're comfortable with, right? In areas of Asia and certain areas in Latin America. And, I'm from New York, so we're always wanting to tell you what we think, right? So, and trying to temper that. So we would have a code word as a team. And, someone, I forget what it was, but it was like, somebody's like, oh, Fred just entered the room. And, or is Fred in the room? Something like that would just reset the norms and get everybody back to the commitment we made to each other.
Yeah.
To have those open and honest dialogues, even if they're uncomfortable. So I think, bringing in some of those ideas are always fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is hard, but it's also really good. It's really rewarding, right? And it has to be practiced, like anything else. If you want to stay alive, you got to eat, you got to breathe oxygen, you got to exercise. If you want to have a high performing team, you got to practice this, right? Yeah. So we did that. I just called it our hot seat roundtable. We did it without a table, in a circle every quarter.
Wow.
What's working? What am I bringing to the team? Where do I need to work? Here's what I think I'm working on. Does that resonate with you? And then everybody gives good feedback.
Right? Absolutely. And so throughout your career and through your work at Pinnacle, you've been in the room with some of the most innovative leaders in the world. And so what is one piece of advice or mindset shift that you think is going to separate the future forward leaders from everyone else?
I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing is that these leaders are recognizing that they don't have all the answers, and they're willing to admit that.
Okay.
Right? That they can have a team around them that can be smarter in certain areas than they are. Right. And again, coming back to the vulnerability, that's not a sign of weakness anymore. Used to be, if I'm the leader, I have to have all the answers.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right? But now you can have answers in the areas of your expertise, but it's also okay to say, hey, Nancy, what about you on this one? Well, I know this is your wheelhouse, and the motivation and the feeling that she has of being seen and bringing her whole self to the table, and you're going to get a much better output than if you just override it with that. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm seeing from a leadership shift is that they don't have to have all the answers. And it's much better and healthier for the leader too, because it's much less pressure and much more sustainable.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the first time, I think, in my career, which has been plenty of years behind it, where
you don't have as much gray in your beard as I do, though.
I hope not. If that's the case, we have some problems, right? So I think everybody on the speaker panel either has gray hair or is hiding it. And but one of the things that I've not seen before is we've all heard the saying, "What got you here won't get you where you want to go." Right? Yeah. And we know that we've got to change, we've got to modify, we've got to adapt, we've got to do all these things. But from a leadership perspective, this is the first time I think I've ever seen where what got you here is actually going to prevent your success in the future.
Right.
And so no wonder the playbooks don't work. No wonder our leaders are stressed out beyond belief and engagement scores are low and, businesses aren't performing the way they want to or have the agility or that adaptability. Is because we're using playbooks that not only don't work anymore, but are taking our businesses and our organizations in the wrong direction. And so talk about the hackathons, right? And so the whole event here is really, it's designed to be very, very different. So talk about your hackathon.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited about that because you get, a bunch of people in the room, a bunch of CEOs, executives, senior leaders that know that leadership is their main issue. So they choose into this. And then we're going to work together we'll set some framework and then we'll let them choose. What is
Mhm.
it we need to solve? What's most pressing? What's most urgent in my business right now? And we'll have two work streams, and then we'll work together with getting all those brilliant minds. Again, I don't have to be the smartest one in the room. Get all those brilliant minds to work together, and then develop concrete action plans.
Yeah.
And our plan is to have action plans. It may vary, but our plan is in 4 areas of leadership to have whatever is most pressing for all those in the room. We have a lot of templates, a lot of toolboxes to support, but to develop what's most pressing to everybody that's there. And all of them will leave with those 4 action plans that they can apply. They can choose which one's most important for their company, for their organization, and they can apply that on Monday.
I love it. Because what we've created is an unconference. It
Yes.
is not your normal sit there, listen, learn, get talked at, meet a few interesting people, have some great ideas on a notebook, and then get back to firefighting.
Right.
Our leaders need more, and we expect more. And so, just for those of you watching, if you've not tuned into an episode or two before, we are creating this environment where it is an experience. And it's the type of situation where, if you want to think about the vibe, it's think tank meets business hackathon, where everyone is going to have a chance to work shoulder to shoulder with experts just like Art and his peers to be able to look into your business in real time to solve problems with future forward solutions. And anybody who is planning for 2026, who is secretly worried about viability to 2030 at the way things are going, this is a must attend event. So, Art, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today and giving us a few previews into all the awesomeness that is going to be taking place on October 16th at Luminary in New York. So I cannot wait to see you in real life in just a few weeks.
Awesome, Tammy. I'm really excited about it. Looking forward to learning and collaborating with all these wonderful business executives to help them move their businesses forward in a way that feels much better to them as well.
Yeah, sounds great. All right. Well,